So, 10 reasons why art is so important in Bethlehem. The first, art is actually about self-expression. I remember we have a dance and theater group at our center, young people, young adults. And I remember when these young people were meeting, and they were working on a new play called Portraits of Fear. And they were basically talking, what are the fears of young people in Bethlehem? Many fears, not only the occupation and the soldiers, but unemployment is an issue, but also women, equality is another issue. And so by creating this play, by writing it, that was actually the best forum for self-expression. Through the theater, they found a tool how actually to say what is on their heart in a new language. And when they came and performed at our center that play, everyone was in tears, everyone was moved, because that was the young people expressing themselves. Now, in our part of the world, this becomes important to create a culture of democracy. Because democracy is not only about election. Democracy at its heart, it's about self-expression. And we see a very important role, actually, in our work in promoting democracy. The second reason why art is important, because art is a therapy. I remember 2001, Bethlehem was experiencing lots of shelling. Israeli tanks were stationed on another mountain, and they were shelling the little town of Bethlehem. There were lots of Israeli soldiers in our town. And I remember we were under curfew most of the time. Curfew means 24/7 for weeks. We couldn't leave home. They will just open or lift the curfew for maybe 2 hours so that we can go quickly and purchase some groceries. And I remember one day, my wife and my youngest daughter, Tala, they went during these 2 hours to visit their grandma. You know, for a grandma living alone, it's not easy to be under curfew. So they wanted to see if she needs anything. And on the way back, they were caught in between Israeli soldiers shooting and Palestinian kids throwing stones. And one bullet came so close to my daughter, it was like maybe just 2 to 3 feet away from where she was standing. I stayed at home at that day, and I remember when Tala, this is my youngest daughter, when she came back with my wife Najwa, that actually Tala could not speak for 3 hours. And people who know Tala, she is the most talkative kid, very sociable. And that was actually, I mean, for me, I knew there is something wrong. My wife told me what happened, but Tala was not able to express herself. After 3 hours, she took some papers, threw herself on the carpet in the living room, took some colored pencils, and started painting. And only after painting was she able to talk? At that time, that was for me actually a symbol of the power of art as a therapy. And you know, I mean, art therapy is not something new, but in our context, with all of the frustration and the depression that is going on, art is giving people a way to do a therapy without going to a therapist. Because in fact, if every one of us need to go to a therapist, and actually Johns Hopkins University did a study a few years ago, and that study showed that 85% or 84% of the Palestinian people have some symptoms of depression. We don't have that many psychologists. But art could be such a tool for therapy. But the third reason why art is important, because art has to do with creativity. And for me, creativity is what God is calling us to do. You know, war, stagnation is for me always symbol for uncreativity. You know, I would like to send all of these politicians, Israeli, Palestinians, I will not talk about American politicians, I would like to send all of them, you know, to do some art classes, because they might get a bit more creative. And creativity is very much needed. War is boring because it's not creative. And for me, creativity is very important for imagination. Without being creative, you cannot imagine another world than the world you are living in. Otherwise, you think that's it, we are stuck for life and eternity, and you cannot imagine something new, something different, something more creative to come, and that you can participate in working on. The fourth reason why art is important, art has to do a lot with discovering God's talents in people. When God created us, we all got lots of talents. But many of these talents that we have, they are just undiscovered. Sometimes we ourselves don't know. We need somebody to come and discover what is in us. And for me, art is exactly like that, is to discover that creativity, that talent, to discover it, but then to develop it, to nurture it, so that actually people can excel in it. And this is actually why we decided 5 years ago to open the first college that Michael mentioned, the first college of fine arts in the Middle East that focus really on the art, on music, on dance, theater, filmmaking, communication, everything that has to do with the art, because we really wanted to discover all of these gifts that are there in our, especially young people, but not only young people, and to discover them, to nurture them, to work on those skills through training, through education, so that actually our people can reach the potential God wants them to reach. Otherwise, it's like the one talent that one man got, and he went and buried it. He did not use it. We want our people to use the talents that God gave them. And art is a very important tool. The fifth reason why art is important, art is very much connected to economy because it's about producing. You know, we produce films, we produce plays, we produce art and pottery. It's about production. And for many people, especially women in our part of the world, this can become a very important tool, not only for financial survival, but actually for economical empowerment. I remember, and in my book, Bethlehem Besieged, I tell the story of Samar, a young woman at our church. She comes from a very, very, very poor family. She was like on the social payroll of our congregation for several months. But at some point we said, you know what, I mean, we cannot do this ongoing. It's also not good for the people. And we knew that actually Samar is talented in art. She has just the right eye for it. And so we said, okay, we will pay for you a course at our center to go and take a course in stained glass. But actually making stained glass out of the broken glass, especially after the invasion in 2002, when Israel invaded Bethlehem. Maybe you remember the standoff at the Church of the Nativity. There were lots of glass pieces shattered all over the town. And those glass pieces became actually a symbol of the shattered hopes in peace and in justice. And so we trained our students, including Samar, and after the invasion, actually, we asked them to go out and to gather all of these pieces of shattered glass and to bring them to the workshops and to develop angels and butterflies and crosses, symbols of life that comes out of death. And Samar was really good. She created the first angel. And that angel sold very well. In fact, you can buy it here. I think if you buy it tonight, you will get 15% reduction, isn't it? No, just kidding, just kidding. So Samar started producing these angels. And actually, suddenly she was empowered because she had an income. She didn't need to be on the payroll at church. And that was not enough. She started a small new business. She hired 2 other women to work with her because suddenly she had so many orders that they had to deal with. Samar was a transformed person because art was a tool that helped her unlock her potential and to become economically independent. The sixth reason why art is important, because art is about beauty. And beauty is something very important, not only here in the States. I mean, this is a gorgeous, I mean, when I look to the ceiling, it's a gorgeous, it's such a beautiful church. You know, sometimes when people come to Palestine, they think, why should people in Palestine have beauty? When everything seems to be falling apart. Exactly therefore is beauty even more important. And so if you come to our center, actually, you feel you are in a totally different world suddenly, in a totally different oasis. Everything, the architectures, the paintings on the wall, the sun, everything talks about beauty. Because beauty is like a magnet for people who are living in a context where everything around them is falling apart. They don't see anything, anymore to look for. And this is why we want to invest in beauty, because this is actually what God is intending for this world. It's not for the world to fall apart, but to come together in a holistic and in a beautiful way. The seventh reason why art is important, because, for me, art is the common ground. It's interesting. When I studied in Germany, when we would meet as people from the Arab world, and when we start talking about politics, quickly we get into a fight. I know you don't do that here among Republicans and Democrats, so that's only in the Arab world, okay? So when we talk about politics, we will start fighting. When we talk about religion, we disagree, because there are Christians and there are Muslims, and among the Muslims there are Shiites and there are Sunnis, and among Christians there are Orthodox and there are Lutherans. And so where is the common ground? What can hold our region together? For me, it's the art. This is why when I studied in Germany, whenever really we wanted to have good time together, what we will do, we will listen to the most famous Palestinian female or Arab female singer, Fairuz, and we will immediately engage singing with her because we think we can sing better than her. And this is where, people from Libya and people from Syria and people from Palestine, everyone could just join in that song. That was the common ground. And I believe we need to invest more and more in this common ground. In fact, I think the Arab Spring cannot be a spring without melodies, because that is the common ground. The eighth reason why art is important, because art has to do with identity. It is through art that we shape our identity. And I think as Christians we can relate to that. Imagine a Sunday service without hymns. I mean, our identity is very much based on the hymns we sing. When I look here, right and left at the artwork, this shapes our identity. What is a Christian church without Christian art, without Christian music? This is really our identity. And for me, it is very important to work on shaping a dynamic identity for our people through the art. And for me as a pastor, actually, this becomes even more important, because if you come to Christmas Lutheran Church and you worship with us, you will discover actually that our liturgy is based on 19th century Southern German liturgy. People in Southern Germany, they have changed their liturgy already 10 times since that time, and we hold to that holy liturgy. If you come to Christmas Lutheran Church and you look at the stained glass window from the 19th century, they are marvelous. But, you think Jesus was originally from Scandinavia. with his blue eyes and blonde hair. Even golden hair, you know, like a bit maybe Irish or something, you know. And I still remember when I challenged one of the most famous Palestinian Christian artists to do for us a painting with the Last Supper. And, you know, he wanted also, because, you know, he wanted to do it like the Scandinavian way. I said, no, I would like to do it Palestinian way. Because remember, Jesus was Middle Easterner, right? In fact, you know, in many airports today in the world, if he were to come again, he will be stopped. And I just couldn't believe it, because, you know, that artist, he is Christian, he is Lutheran, he's smart, just could not imagine Jesus as a Middle Easterner. Anyhow, after 6 months of working with him intensely and challenging him, we had this marvelous Last Supper painting that is now the original at our restaurant, actually, called the Upper Room. And I remember I had a group of Catholic priests, Palestinian, Arab Catholic priests visiting us. I was showing them that painting. And, oh, you know, they were angry at me. How dare, they told me, how dare can you paint Christ not with blue eyes and blonde hair? I said, you know, who said that Jesus had blue eyes and blonde hair? You know, they came with this Veronica thing, and I said, you know what? I don't care, and we should not care if Jesus had blue eyes, or blonde eyes, or black eyes, or green eyes. Who cares? This is not why he came. He came to save us. But if you cannot imagine Christ but with blue eyes, and you have brown eyes, then you have a problem with your identity. And this is what we have to talk about, not about Jesus. It's about your identity as a Palestinian Christian. You know, when African Americans were painting Jesus as a black person, not that he was black, but it's about their identity, because they saw Jesus as someone of them. And so art is very much about identity, and especially to develop a Christian contextual identity is something that is really at the heart of our ministry, and this is why art is important. The ninth reason why art is important, because art is all about communication. If you go to a play, it's about communication. If you look at a painting, it is a message that is being communicated to you. If you hear a song, it's communication. And for me, actually, art, the play, paintings, pottery, are much more powerful communication tools that are important to reach out to people today. They are very important communication tools. And then the important thing for me is sometimes that I feel language is already, at least in our part of the world, is already occupied. It's as if you cannot see anything new anymore. But with the art, you find always new ways how to say things differently, creatively, so that people will start to think again. Often I see people, standing in front of a painting and thinking, what is it saying? I'm not sure if they do that when they hear lectures often, but I see that that is a very communication tool, and we would like, actually, in our part of the world, we want to help our people to communicate a positive story. I always say what made Palestine so important was that good news came out of Palestine. And last but not least, the 10th reason why art is important, because for me art is participating in God's continuing creation. The creation didn't end on the 6th day. God continued to create with us and through us. And He would like us to participate in that recreation. Remember, God was the ultimate potter man, right? At the creation. And remember that the cross was nothing but the divine drama. And remember that actually everything we see around us is part of the great painting that God did through this creation. But it's not over yet. We are called to participate. And so I feel art is calling people to participate in creating the world that God had in mind from the beginning. And I think this is especially our calling as Christians, and especially our calling as Christians in the Middle East. In that sense, art is creating space for hope. And if you come to our center, you will see that everything actually we do is creating those spaces, this space that hope can grow in the most hopeless situation.